Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here. Don't forget to subscribe, and it is Sunday, so we are doing breaches of the week. Whew, and this week in breaches, absolutely insane. But as always, I want to start with those that sent me a lot of this information, and that would be Kent Johnson, Ted Sasso, Jacqueline Wolf, and Michael Vanderhoek. And thank you very, very much, and please keep sending those tips my way. And with that, let's dive in with an update on Oracle, which could be one of the biggest data breaches of the year. Now, Cloud SEK this past Friday released a report claiming that basically the attacker had exfiltrated more than 6 million records that impacted more than 140,000 tenants. That's essentially what was claimed last time I talked about this on Last Breaches, but now we've got some evidence because the researchers said the attackers, who've been basically active since January, was offering incentives for anyone to help decrypt SSO passwords so they could pressure companies to pay a fee for data removal, and that's according, again, to Cloud SEK. Now, Oracle issued a statement to Bleeping Computer also on that Friday denying there was any breach, but Cloud SEK researchers released an additional report on Monday with new evidence supporting that claim. Now, Cloud SEK said basically what we understood from this originally. They're confirming this, that they did get access, the attackers get access to login.us2.oraclecloud.com, which is a production SSO or single sign-on server that was active for about 30 days before they were discovered. Quote, we suspect the actor leveraged a zero-day vulnerability or misconfiguration in the OAuth 2 authentication process. A spokesperson for Oracle still isn't saying anything, and they're not responding. So we'll see what happens. Oracle's denying this. The evidence is mounting, and if that is the case, this is going to be huge. Corporations as large as TikTok, or rather platforms as large as TikTok, use Oracle, so this is a big one. Moving on. Parcel Plus. They announced this past Thursday evening that they had been the target of a spear phishing attack being linked to foreign actors. Now, they prepare taxes, and out of the roughly 5,000 federal tax returns that they've been prepared, they've identified 21 victims, essentially, and here we are, and that they are working with the software provider that they have, the IRS, and sending out notices as needed. So heads up, if you use Parcel Plus in Hanover, I'm not sure where Hanover is in this case, heads up. Moving on, Lee University on March 25th, they filed with New Hampshire after discovering an unauthorized party had gained access into their network. Sensitive information was hit. I do not have a list, but Lee University sending out notices. And with that, let's move to our mini segment this week, simply entitled, if you just spent money on cybersecurity, you wouldn't be basically ruining your reputation. I wouldn't be talking about you. And here we go. And they definitely wouldn't be paying money, right? So Converse University, a class action has been filed against them for basically the fact that the college waited 4 months to release a letter describing the data breach. This letter was sent on March 19th, and essentially November 11 was when the attack happened. I don't have more information, but best of luck to you, Converse University complainants. Moving on, let's head on over to the United Kingdom and talk about the Advanced Computer Software Group. They were fined for basically for a breach that put personal information of 79,404 Brits at risk, and that's according to the ICO, or Information Commissioner's Officer of the United Kingdom, and they were fined £3 million. So good luck to you. Moving on, 23andMe, you've heard the news. Basically, I've done videos, segments, podcasts, radio segments on 23andMe, and I think the fallout from DNA, but they've got some legal issues too, because sticking with the United Kingdom, the ICO is fining them amidst the data breach investigation and bankruptcy filing, and obviously, here we go. Now, the ICO has issued 23andMe with provisional findings and a notice of intent to fine them $5.93 million following a joint investigation with Canadian authorities into their past data breach, which I also reported on as well. Company has filed for Chapter 11. We're going to see what happens, but with almost $6 million US being fined to a company that doesn't have that kind of money at hand, I don't know what the UK is planning on recouping here, but we'll see. Moving on, back to United States with Enzo Biochem. They just agreed to a $7.5 million class action to settle their 2023 data breach And this potentially benefits anybody that was compromised on or about April 6th of 2023 and who received a mail-in notice from Enzo essentially saying they were compromised. You've got until June 23rd of this year to go get paid. Moving on, we are going to go into real time because that is the end of our mini segment. And if any of them had just paid for cybersecurity, well, with the exception of the bankrupt 23andMe, I wouldn't be talking about them. So with that, back to real-time cloud-based streaming company Stream Elements. They confirmed they suffered a data breach at a third-party service provider after a threat actor leaked samples basically of stolen data on a hacking forum. The platform reassured their users the attack did not impact their servers, though older data from the third-party provider they stopped working with last year was still exposed. So Stream Elements throwing the third party under the bus. Don't know who that is yet. Moving on, Resort Data Processing. I cannot speak today. On March 20th, Resort Data Processing filed with New Hampshire after discovering unauthorized access into their network, and essentially sensitive information was hit. I do not have a listing, but they are now sending out notices as well. Moving on, Concord Orthopedics in Concord, New Hampshire. They are working to contact over 67,000 Granite Staters whose information may have been accessed. Concord Orthopedics said they got hit in November of 2024 by a third-party vendor whose software is used for patient registration. I do not have a name of that, but names, driver's license, social security, and health insurance information was cut up. So heads up, if you live in New Hampshire and use Concord Orthopedics, I assume in scenic Concord. Moving on, CPS Solutions, which helps support pharmacy operations. And this is an update because another hospital has had to basically declare a breach as a result of CPS, and that would be Three Rivers Hospital. So heads up to you patients. Moving on, ALN Medical Management. On March 21 of this year, they filed with Massachusetts after discovering an unauthorized party basically got into them via a third-party hosting service. Name, social security numbers, and financial account information is essentially impacted here, and the healthcare providers basically include National Spine and Pain, Inpatient Physician Associates, HOAG Clinic, and Allied Physicians Group. ALN is sending out notices as well. Moving on, Nationwide Recovery Services. They're a debt collector. They just sent a letter on February 17th saying that they had a cyber incident on July 14th of last year. Way to speed that one up, guys. And right now, I have no other information other than Hamilton County, Tennessee's emergency medical services is caught up in this. And so heads up to you if you've ever caught an ambulance ride with Hamilton County EMS. Moving on, network equipment vendor Kinetic. And we're going to Russia for this one because the Russians are not immune from this. Now, more than 1 million households, primarily in Russia, had their credentials, logs, network configurations, and other sensitive details leaked following a compromise of Kinetic's mobile app database. Now, aside from leaking more than 1.03 million records with comprehensive user data and 929,501 records with device information, the database also exposed 558,371 device configuration records and service logs with more than 53.8 million records in total being hit. So if you're in Russia, and honestly, I do get some listeners or followers from Russia on occasion, according to the analytics I get from my platform. So if you're one of those, heads up to you if you have a Kinetic mobile app or network device in your life. Moving on, Reinhardt Dentistry. On March 25th, William F. Reinhardt, DMDPA, aka Reinhardt Dentistry, filed with Health and Human Services, basically saying they got hit. Unauthorized party was able to access patient-sensitive information. I do not have a listing. Reinhardt Dentistry is sending out notices. Moving on, Lafayette Federal Credit Union, LFCU, announced personal sensitive information, including names and social security numbers of its clients, may have been stolen. That is all I know right now. This was a notice from a law firm saying they're investigating it. So if you use Lafayette Federal Credit Union, you might want to Google it because here come the class actions. And that's the unfortunate nature of the business. And I'm never a fan when credit unions are hit as well because they're usually very customer focused, more so than banks. And finally, excuse me, we have two finalies for you this week. The first one is simply drones. I'm not talking about brands per se, but but I'm talking about the data breaches that drones occasionally cause. And so with that, let's talk about this, because the vice president of the Indiana Farm Bureau says farmers are becoming more concerned about drone data collection. Now, the VP rather, of Indiana Farm Bureau, Kendall Culp, said that while drones have increased efficiency on farms, data breaches are a growing concern for farmers. And of course, why wouldn't they? And I quote, "We're spraying with them and we're seeding with them, but they could still be very dangerous. It hasn't been too many years ago that these were brand new technology and not many individuals or organizations had a drone. We're continuing to improve those with more opportunities." Now, he's telling essentially brownfield Indiana producers have also expressed concern about drones being used for surveillance, meaning Brownville, Indiana farmers, I'm guessing producers, produce, I don't know, I'm not a farmer, but I'm guessing. Quote, "There's been a lot of concern, especially in Northeast Indiana, with avian influenza about people seeing drones or some sort of aircraft in the vicinity. Now, as technology continues to evolve, maintaining data security and privacy are critical to its continued use in the industry." And Brownfield talked to Culp basically during the 2025 Indiana Agriculture Threats and Security Summit, which apparently is a thing. I had no idea that existed, but I'm glad to see farmers actually taking this seriously. Now, if you're thinking, what's a drone going to have to do with farming and all of that? Well, if it has cameras, it could potentially maybe capture interesting farm techniques that, let's say, a farmer has for competitive advantage. Maybe somebody can take control of the drone and down it. I mean, not to mention, you might be sending critical or sensitive information, including biometrics, if it's taking, let's say, detailed images of workers on the farm. There's a lot of different things that could actually go wrong with something like this, not to mention, God forbid, crashing it into a cow or something. So obviously that's a huge issue, and I hope Indiana farmers and all farmers across the Midwest, the United States, and the world actually start getting cybersecurity focused and minded. And we don't normally think about farming and cybersecurity, but it's definitely a thing, and I'm glad to see that they are taking care of that. So good on you, Indiana agriculture, everything. Moving on. The last finally we have for you today is Twitter, aka X. And this honestly could be a contender for breaches of the year. Now, a data leak involving 2.87 billion X users has surfaced on breach forums. And according to a post by a user called Thinking1, the leak is a result of a disgruntled X employee who allegedly stole the data during that period of mass layoffs. Remember, Elon Musk came in with the flamethrower in the same way that he's doing that with Doge. Not getting political, but yeah, I mean, it's fire early and often and then rehire as needed, which might work for a private corporation, not so much for the government, but again, not having that debate. Now, if this is true, this would be the largest social media data leak in history. But neither X nor the broader public tends to be aware of this one. And so here we are. If you're listening to this or you're watching the video version of this, now you know, and most people don't. So here's what we know about the leak. The original post was by Thinking1, and it states that the data, around 400 gigabytes worth, was likely exfiltrated during that layoff period when they were just firing everybody over at X. And the poster claims that they tried contacting X through multiple methods but received no response. And so, frustrated with the lack of acknowledgement from X and the general public, they took matters into their own hand and decided to merge that newly leaked data with another infamous data breach from January of 2023. Now, to understand the full scope of what was leaked, let's start with the 2023 data breach over at X that basically affected 209 million users, and that exposed email addresses, display names and username handles, and then follower count and account creation dates. Now, at that time, X downplayed the leak, stating that basically consisted of publicly available data, not that, let's say, my email address I'm using is publicly available through a Google search, but okay. Now, despite that massive exposure of email addresses, they insisted no sensitive or private information was involved. However, security experts warned that a combination of those emails and public data could enable phishing and identity theft, etc., etc. So, with that, let's fast forward to 2025 and talk about what's in this leak. This is a completely different thing. Now, unlike the 2023 leak, it doesn't contain email addresses, but it's got a ton of profile metadata, and that includes account creation dates, user IDs and screen names, profile descriptions and URLs, location and time zone settings, display names current and from 2021, follower count from both 2021 and 2025, tweet count and timestamps of last tweet, friend count, listed count, and favorites count, source of last tweet, such as TweetDeck, etc., status settings, whether the profile is verified or protected. Remember, you can now pay for verification, which previously you could not. So the data gives us a detailed snapshot of users' profiles and activity over time, including bios, follower counts from different years, tweet history, even the app used for the last tweet. But the one thing it doesn't have, obviously, is those email addresses. So the question is, who is Thinking One and how did they get this data? That's one of the biggest mysteries here, is how they have managed to obtain all of this information in the first place. Unlike typical malicious hackers, they're not known for breaching systems themselves, but are highly regarded for analyzing and interpreting leaked data sets. Whether they received the data from another source or conducted some kind of sophisticated data aggregation is still unclear. Their theory that a disgruntled employee leaked the data after the layoffs is, for the record, unconfirmed, and there's no concrete evidence to support it. It's only a plausible hypothesis, given the timing and the internal mess over at X. In other words, everybody was not watching the barn because there were firings, etc., so it would be very easy to steal all the data during that period. Now, if these claims are true, this is not just a massive data leak in size, but obviously a blow to any user that's got an account on Twitter, aka X, myself included. You might be following me on Twitter and therefore listening to my podcast or watching this video as a result of finding it there. On top of this, whether this was an inside job or not, users are left with more questions than answers. Much of their data has been taken, and how much of that has been taken? Basically, who's behind the leak? Why hasn't X said anything about this? Thinking One has reached out multiple times and they're not saying it. So are they just claiming, like Oracle, it doesn't exist? I don't know. But we're going to find out, and I think it's going to be a big one, because usually when you have this kind of data, that is the basics of PII. You can start phishing with that. So we'll see what happens, but those were your breaches of the week. And quite frankly, if you're on social media, well, quite frankly, I think probably thanks to Oracle, we're all impacted in some way, whether we realize it or not. So I'll leave you with that happy thought. And those were your breaches of the week. Were you impacted? Let me know. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. Also Blue Sky and Mastodon. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please attempt to stay private. Take care.